News. News 20 at 5, Sidney Wright was at the rally yesterday, and he's been following the developments surrounding the not guilty verdicts and joins us live in the studio with more. Sidney, what can you tell us?
Well, Brittany, it was hot out yesterday, but the sun wasn't the only thing that was fired up. Hundreds of NAACP freedom fighters arrived at the Civic Center ready to storm the federal courthouse, and by day's end, they were determined to have their voices heard.
No justice, no peace.
Step by step, car by car, and busload by busload, they came with a common goal in mind and a message for anyone who would listen. NAACP chapters from across the state, some as far away as Miami, converged on the Capitol in pursuit of justice for Martin Lee Anderson. Justice against 8 people who they say violated Anderson's civil rights.
The United States Department of Justice has a responsibility to ensure that anybody who receives an excessive beating, anybody who receives the kind of treatment that Martin got, they violated the civil rights of this country.
Adora Obianwaze is president of Florida's NAACP chapters. She says she requested for Florida's chief federal prosecutor, U.S. Attorney Gregory Miller, to investigate the case a year ago, but nothing was done.
So yes, I walked out. I never heard from him anymore. Now today he came up with an explanation. I'm like, I don't want to hear it today. You know, we are now here on the spot. You got something to say. And during the past 12 months, you said nothing to me.
We are in trouble, my people, because we are backtracking.
Speaker after speaker took to the podium, telling stories of how they saw justice and have been denied. But they also came to encourage the masses to keep fighting.
You know that, and I know that. But what I saw, and what you saw, and what half of the world saw was more than 7 minutes of a child being beaten to death. Beaten to death.
So what happens next? Where do they go after the crowds have disappeared and the media have returned to their offices? If supporters have anything to say about it, this cause will not die in Bay County, not in Tallahassee, and not even in the state of Florida. And we should point out that at the end of the rally yesterday, Anderson's parents went into the federal courthouse to speak with state officials. There is no word yet on what came out of that meeting. And the NAACP says they're not planning to slow down anytime soon. They say if their concerns are not heard and their demands are not met, they're ready to take their fight to the president's front lawn. Brittany?
All right. Now, Sidney, you mentioned U.S. Attorney Gregory Miller. Now, that's not a name we've heard very often. What can you tell us about him?
Well, Brittany, Attorney Miller is the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Florida, as well as the Acting Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. Now, earlier this month, he's the one who called for the DOJ to review the evidence in the Anderson case and promised to take action if the evidence indicated a civil rights violation. Well, as you saw, the president of Florida's NAACP chapters is upset because she says she asked Miller to do that a year ago, but nothing happened. And we attempted to contact Attorney Miller today and get his side of the story, but our phone calls have not yet been returned. Brittany?
All right. Thanks, Sidney. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on that story.
Thanks, Brittany. Back in February, the city began an aggressive plan to urbanize parts of Lapona Road. But that project was all but stopped in its tracks when the city had to bargain with homeowners for part of their land to start construction. Well, now it seems the ball is moving again. And for those who drive along Lapona Road, there is a chance that traffic could be affected. Mr. Litch told me that because Lapona Road is so narrow that they may have to actually make the street a one-lane, one-way to give the contractor some room to work. So we'll follow up for you. Check back in if it's necessary. Jessica?
News 20 at 5, Sidney Wright is here now with the answer. Sidney?
Well, Brittany, the time for diplomacy is over. That was the sentiment at an emergency meeting held by the Student Coalition for Justice. The coalition is made up of students from all over Tallahassee, and they met during the weekend to strategize and mobilize a generation. And by several accounts, this case is far from over. The Department of Justice is continuing to investigate the case and will determine whether to press federal charges against the guards and nurse at the boot camp for civil rights violations. And we're hearing now that the coalition is currently meeting with representatives from the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice at the federal courthouse. That meeting started a little while ago. We do have a crew on the scene, and we'll be sure to update you on this story this Friday on the Weekend Review. Brittany?